running currently. Oops, where have we got this one? Yeah, there, now. Is that better?
Better.
Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good? I can get nice and loud. I have run in...
Get closer.
Closer?
Yes.
This is my 6th campaign. I have run 3 times federally and twice provincially, and now a 3rd provincially. I'm running in Edmonton Decor. I was asked to speak, not in that capacity, however. So I'm going to get a little personal. Most of you are familiar with a lot of the climate work that we do. You're familiar with the stats coming out of Antarctica. You're familiar with the glaciers melting. You're familiar with most of those. So I'm not going to speak to most of those. There's a couple of things that most people don't know, and I'm going to speak to that aspect of it. Most of you probably have not actually been trained in earth sciences. You're very activist and aware, but you don't see a lot of behind-the-scenes work. As most are unaware, I was trained as a petroleum engineer in the 80s in Alberta. So that was very exciting. So I've got a bit more insight into some of this than a lot of other folks. When I went in, I wanted to train in earth sciences. I wanted to do hydrology, climatology. None of those programs existed in the 80s in Alberta. The only thing you could train in earth sciences was a petroleum engineer. That says it right there, I think, in a nutshell. I tried to look for those programs and they didn't exist. However, I did get a real insight into how Alberta thinks in a behind-the-scenes level. My professors were very clear that we were in a mass extinction event in the 80s, and that our climate was altering and had been since the Industrial Revolution. It's all very open and was very talked about. When I got out of university and learned all of these things, they asked me about the tar sands and how it was just in the middle of the 80s, it wasn't actually going quite as full-blown as it is now. But they talked openly about what we would call as tailings ponds. Tailings ponds is a great word, by the way. It means nothing but what it actually is. What it is a giant toxic reservoir that they throw all of the crap into and then hope it settles. It's really a settling thing. It has no concrete underneath it. It has no way of stopping any of the water going into the water table. That's how they're designed. They've always been that way. They might be making noises about changing them now, but they really just sit right over the water table and sink right in. The stuff that's supposed to sit there, they're supposed to like scrape out later, but they don't actually do that. The trillions, literally trillions of liters of fresh water that goes into the process every year was talked about openly. It's just what you do to get the tar sands working. That's what you do. The professors that taught me didn't think of it as any form of activism or anything other than this is what you do to get this stuff out. They had no moral judgment about it. The people who do this work have no moral judgment about it. I, on the other hand, was absolutely horrified. I couldn't believe that you were talking about these things that they were casual. They knew about the cancers in pork chip in the 80s because those are the chemicals, the toxic chemicals, the cancerous, that you need to get that out of there is just something you need to do. That's how you get the stuff out of there. So again, no moral judgment, but they knew about it at the time. When I tried to take a hydrology course, one of the reasons we couldn't get the data is because there was no data being taken from the water table at that time. You couldn't actually get the data. The doctor was trying to get people to hear about the cancers, the rare cancers in pork chip, was actually charged with taking water and having it analyzed. We haven't done any of that analysis. Only recently did they start retesting. The reason they were able to claim there was no actual change to the water table all the time is because they weren't taking any readings. We all knew that. That was what you did. Because if you took the readings, people would know it was toxic. So nobody ever took the readings. So we knew about all of this stuff at the time. Climate denying is a very recent and very new concept, done almost entirely from the astroturfing. The astroturf people have tried to claim that there's a debate on climate change. There has never been a debate on climate change. Not in any of the earth sciences. We know it's been going on since the Industrial Revolution. The petroleum engineers have known it's been going on since the Industrial Revolution. It follows the pattern exactly. Now, we also don't want to get distracted with the concept of cyclical. I know a lot of folks are trying to pretend that climate change is cyclical. Well, it is, kind of. It is in a million-year kind of reign. Humans have only existed for less than 1 million years. Most species only have a lifespan of about 1 million years. But the actual climate of this planet is not normally like this. Normally, the Earth is a little more Venus-like. If you can imagine an equator that's bordering on 50 plus most of the time, going up to 70 plus. I want you to imagine an entire zone like that. Nothing that we have can survive that easily. That was all switched at the last climate change event. Now, yes, we are switching that back, because if you put more carbon into the environment, if you do a bunch of other things, ocean acidification, you switch the climate back to that. There is no way anything in this current incarnation of our ecosystem can survive that. We can go back and look and see how fast the winds were. If you can imagine these current superstars that are going through, that are laying waste, that make it look like an atom bomb has hit everything that we know, those are minor compared to what used to happen in the past. If we let the climate switch itself back to the original way that it normally goes in this world, there is nothing that we know that can survive it. So I really loathe these little distractions about chemtrails and all that crap. That is nothing compared to what we're doing. No, the tar sands alone have not changed the climate. No, destroying the Amazon rainforest alone has not destroyed the planet. It's all of it together. And all of those feedback loops are switching into the new way. Geologists have a tendency to look at this on a very, very long scale. But that doesn't mean that they thought that we were going to survive any of it. That's just what happens. This entire ecosystem, everything that you know, will be entirely wiped out. That's what a mass extinction means. It doesn't mean that a few things are left. It means everything is wiped out, maybe a couple of bacteria here and maybe a few plants there. That's what a mass extinction means. It means that there's extinctions happening all the time. Again, they talk about cycles and crap. Yes, extinctions are going on all the time. But a mass extinction means that only about 20 to 10% of the entire species that were on the planet are left. So you might be able to eat, that tree and maybe that plant, but that's it. And if you think you can survive 800-kilometer winds, you're just dreaming. If you think you can survive plus 70 temperatures, you're dreaming. It's all underground bunkers? No way, man. The entire ecosystem is gone. So I really want to stress people that we are not trying to save the polar bears here. We are trying to save the entire mammalian existence. Human beings and all mammals can only even reproduce under certain conditions, particularly temperature. There's already fertile rates for all the mammals on the planet going down. All the fertility rates are dropping because we can't. I've been pregnant at plus 30 when I'm 8 months pregnant, and it's really hard to survive. I spent an awful lot of time in front of a fan, and I'm not even on the equatorial region. Do you know what's going to start happening? People are going to start migrating from the equator because they're going to have to, because humans are going to start dying in droves there. And so we're going to get pressure all the way up, and all the plant species are going to change. You guys cannot imagine the scale that we're talking about here. At least most folks who haven't studied earth sciences cannot imagine the scale. They see little bits of it. But this is a massive, massive change to the planet that this particular ecosystem has never experienced. So I don't want to hear anything about cycles, because those cycles are millions of years in the past, and there were dinosaurs. So if you honestly want to try and make sure that we start switching this, we can actually do it. There is actually hope, by the way. There is hope. Those feedback loops that I'm talking about can actually be switched back. They're switched back frequently. The reason there's cycles is because it constantly goes back and forth. We're in a particularly mild phase, and the Earth would like to stay there if she could. So it's actually pretty easy if we consider reconstructionism. For example, not trying to change the deserts. Put deserts back where deserts are supposed to be. Allow deserts to be deserts. Allow the Amazon rainforest to be the Amazon rainforest. When Saddam Hussein was trying to get rid of Aboriginals in a certain area, he drained their life force. It was a wetlands area. He totally drained it. Every bit of life went out of it. When he was toppled, the natives of the area worked extremely hard to put back what was supposed to be there. They allowed the water to come back in. Within 5 years, that wetlands was back, including all of the original diverse species. And it had been gone for 20. We have a lot of hope if we go with the natural systems. In most cases around the world, they can be switched back, especially if we take in the native wisdom of that area. The people in that area know what it's supposed to look like. And all we have to do is hear them and work with that, and not trying to change it into our view of what it's supposed to be. So we don't make a new Amazon rainforest that has a bunch of species that we like, that we can make use of. We go with what was supposed to be there, and it can be switched back, and in a very, very short time. We could literally remove most of the carbon from the environment by using some of the traditional methods. They used to put the carbon actually in the soil, and it increases soil yields. It's a very traditional method. There are lots of ways that we could fix this, but we can't keep going with things like tar sands. They are not only incredibly toxic and putting more carbon in, and we have always known that, but they are one of the forces of destruction that we cannot counter easily. So we've always known this, at least in the industry. And I'm always really surprised that the regular public doesn't know about most of this. When I got out and I started telling people and standing up and saying, I know what the maps are going to look like. I know what Alberta's going to look like in 30 years. It's going to be a desert. They all stared at me. But that's what projections are. When climate scientists say they're shocked by something, they don't mean the same thing that other people mean by shocked. They mean they predicted that, but it's a way worse case scenario than they were hoping for. That's what they mean. They mean we refine the science, not that it's shocking. It's shocking in, oh my God, my kids are going to survive this. Not, that wasn't what I was expecting. So it's a very different view. Scientists are not changing their predictions. Whenever the papers say they're changing them, they're not changing them. They're just telling you the worst part of what you didn't want to hear, and they already knew. So it's not like climate scientists were wrong. It's not like climate scientists have been changing their minds. They're just finally telling you what's actually happening. And people are finally starting to have the vocabulary to be able to talk about it. So the conspiracy theorists, the ones who are talking about climate denying, they don't literally understand climate science. Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about predictions. We know what's going on. The Earth has done this many times in the past. We have all the data. We know what's going to happen. And it is very, very unpleasant. And if we don't switch it soon, it will switch over, and everything that you know, everything that supports us, everything that sustains us, will be gone. And that's what I fight for.